Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku led the Mecha Vanguard. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The smell of burnt sugar and ozone always lingered in the air of Mizurufu. It was the scent of a society running hot, engines redlining, powered by the biological impossibility of quirks. For Izuku Midoriya, the world was a complex schematic he wasn't allowed to build. He sat at his desk in Aldora Junior High, the drone of the teacher's voice fading into the background noise of his own mind. His notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future No. 13, lay open, but unlike the scribbles of his peers, which focused on flash and power ratings, Izuku's page was dominated by a sketch of empty Lady's center of gravity. She relies too much on size, he wrote, the pencil scratching furiously. Square cube law creates stress on her ankles. If she had shock-absorbing braces made of carbon weave, she could increase her pursuit speed by 15%. Midoriya, the teacher's voice cut through his thoughts. Since you're mumbling up a storm, why don't you tell us where you're planning to apply? The class went silent. Izuku froze, his hand instinctively covering the drawing. UA High, the teacher said, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. Isn't that right? The explosion of laughter was immediate and practiced. It was a routine, a mechanism as well-oiled as a piston engine. Deku? UA? Someone jeered. They don't have a janitor course, do they? He's going to analyze the villains to death. Then came the explosion, literal and violent. Katsuki Bakugo's palms slammed onto Izuku's desk, the heat singeing the edges of the notebook. The force knocked Izuku out of his chair, sending him sprawling onto the linoleum. Hey, Deku, Bakugo growled, smoke curling from his fingers. You really don't know when to quit, do you? You're quirkless. Defective. You're a glitch in the system. Izuku looked up, trembling. But it wasn't fear in his eyes, not entirely. He was looking at Bakugo's gauntlets, the invisible mechanism of his sweat glands. Nitroglycerin-like secretion, ignition spark from the palms. If the ducts get clogged, I can still try, Kaken, Izuku stammered. They got rid of the rule that says you need a quirk. You can die in the entrance exam. Bakugo snatched the notebook. And stop writing this trash. He clamped his hands together. Boom. The notebook, charred and smoking, was tossed out the open window. Izuku watched it fall, his heart sinking with it. If you want to be a hero that bad, Bakugo said, turning to leave as the bell rang, believe that you'll be born with a quirk in the next life and take a swan dive off the roof. Izuku remained on the floor for a moment, staring at the scuff marks on the tiles. He didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, his mind retreated to the one place it felt safe, the mechanical logic of how things broke, and how they could be fixed. Step 1, assess damage. Step 2, salvage usable parts. Step 3, rebuild. He stood up, dusted off his uniform, and went to retrieve his book. The koi pond had done no favors to Hero Analysis No. 13. Izuku fished it out, the water dripping from the charred pages. Stupid Kaken, he whispered, wiping the sludge off a drawing of Kamui Woods. It's not trash. It's data. He walked home via the underpass, the shadows stretching long and dark. He was trying to dry the pages with his sleeve when the sewer grate rattled behind him. Fluid dynamics. Viscosity. Surface tension. The sludge erupted from the grate, a towering mass of sentient fluid. Izuku spun around, his eyes widening. A medium-sized invisibility cloak, the villain gurgled, eyes manic and wide. You'll do nicely. Izuku dropped the notebook. Panic, cold and primal, seized his chest. He clawed at the slime as it engulfed him, forcing its way into his mouth and nose. He couldn't breathe. Suffocation. Oxygen deprivation. Brain death in 4 minutes. His hands scrabbled against the liquid. It was viscous, non-Newtonian. The harder he struggled, the harder it became. He needed to disrupt the surface tension. He needed a solvent. He needed, I'm going to die. The thought was a cold, mathematical certainty. His vision blurred. The darkness of the tunnel seemed to close in. Then, the manhole cover exploded upward. Fear not, kid! The voice was a sonic boom, vibrating through the slime and into Izuku's bones. Because I am here, All Might. The symbol of peace. He was a wall of muscle and primary colors, a living engine of justice. The villain shrieked, lashing out with a tendril of sludge. All Might ducked, the movement faster than the eye could track, high-speed kinetic displacement, and pulled back a fist. Texas. Smash! The wind pressure alone was devastating. It hit the slime like a physical hammer, atomizing the villain's cohesion. The sludge splattered against the tunnel walls, releasing Izuku. Izuku hit the ground, gasping, his lungs burning as they dragged in sweet, precious air. He looked up, vision swimming, to see the towering figure checking a bottle of soda. Thought I lost him there. Good thing this is a sturdy bottle. All Might laughed, a sound that felt like safety. Izuku scrambled up. All Might. Can I autograph? Already done, my boy. All Might gave a thumbs up, pointing to the soggy notebook. The signature spanned 2 pages. Thank you? I'll treasure it. It's a family heirloom. Now, I must be off to turn this guy in. Stay safe. All Might crouched, his leg muscles bunching like coiled steel springs. Wait. I have to ask. Izuku stepped forward. The question that had burned in his gut for 10 years. The variable that ruined the equation of his life. Can you be a hero without a quirk? All Might launched himself into the sky, and Izuku, driven by a desperation that defied physics, grabbed onto his leg. The rooftop wind was cold. Izuku stood trembling. The steam rolled off All Might's body. No, not All Might. Not anymore. The figure standing before him was skeletal, gaunt, a chassis stripped of its armor. The sunken eyes, the sharp angles. It was a man running on fumes. All Might explained it all. The injury. The respiratory system failure. The limit. Pro-heroes are always risking their lives, the skeleton man said, his voice raspy and tired. He sat on the railing, looking out over the city. Some villains just can't be fought without powers. Even with support gear, the gap is too wide. Izuku gripped the strap of his backpack. But if I trained hard? If I studied? All Might looked at him. There was no malice in his gaze, only a crushing, brutal pity. I cannot simply say you can do it. That would be irresponsible. If you want to help people, there's the police force. They get teased, but it's a fine profession. All Might stood up, walking toward the stairwell door. It's not bad to dream, young man. But you also have to consider what's realistic. The door clicked shut. Izuku was alone. The silence on the roof was heavier than the sludge had been. Realistic. The word echoed in his head. Realistic was the laws of thermodynamics. Realistic was gravity. Realistic was the fact that all men are not created equal. Izuku walked to the railing. He looked down at the streets below. Cars moved like blood cells through arteries. People walked, ignorant of the skeleton man who held up their society. He's right, Izuku whispered. The tears finally came, hot and stinging. Don't cry. You knew it. You always knew it. You were just waiting for someone to check your math. He wiped his eyes. The data was conclusive. The hypothesis, Izuku Midoriya can be a hero, was rejected. Boom. An explosion rocked the district, visible even from here. A pillar of smoke rose into the sky, black and oily. Villain attack. Izuku's feet moved before his brain engaged. It was a reflex, hard-coded into his operating system. He ran to the stairs. He had to see. Even if he couldn't be a player, he could still be an observer. He could still take notes. The scene was chaos. Fire licked the sides of the buildings in the Tatooine shopping district. The heat was palpable from 2 blocks away. Sirens wailed, a discordant symphony of emergency. Izuku pushed through the crowd, his breath hitching. What happened? Some villain grabbed a kid. A bystander shouted. It's a hostage situation. Izuku reached the police tape and froze. It was the sludge villain. The one All Might had captured. The bottle must have fallen when Izuku grabbed his leg. My fault. The realization hit him like a physical blow. This is my fault. And inside the sludge, thrashing and creating explosions that kept the heroes at bay, was Katsuki Bakugo. Get back! Death Arms shouted, shielding his face from the heat. I can't get close. He's too slippery. I need a lane. Kamui Woods yelled, hopping between lampposts. But the fire! I'll burn up. My quirk requires at least a 2-lane road. Empty Lady cried from the back. They were stuck. Stalled. Izuku watched, his mind racing. He saw Bakugo's face, eyes wide with terror, mouth gasping for air. The look of a victim. Why aren't they moving? Izuku thought frantically. Death Arms has super strength. Backdraft has water cannons. Why is nobody moving? His eyes scanned the debris field. It was a habit he couldn't break. Analyze the environment. Analyze the variables. Variable A, the sludge. Fluid. Vulnerable to wind pressure or scattering. Variable B, the explosions. Bakugo is generating heat. It keeps the sludge loose but prevents approach. Variable C, the gear. Izuku's eyes locked onto an object lying in the rubble near the alley mouth. It was a heavy, industrial-looking gauntlet. It belonged to Death Arms. The hero must have shed it when a piece of debris crushed the locking mechanism, or perhaps the villain had ripped it off. It was sitting in a puddle of water, sparking. Death Arms Impact Piston Gauntlet. Model 4. Hydraulic Assist. Requires a localized battery pack. The casing is cracked. Izuku looked at the heroes. They were waiting for someone with the right quirk to show up. They were waiting for a biological solution to a tactical problem. Bakugo's eyes met Izuku's. For the first time, they weren't looking down on him. They were pleading. Don't look at me, Izuku thought. I'm quirkless. I'm realistic. But his legs were already moving. Hey! Kid! Get back here! Death Arms screamed. Izuku ducked under the tape. He didn't run blindly this time. He ran with a trajectory. He slid across the pavement, skidding to a halt next to the discarded gauntlet. The heat was intense. His school uniform felt like it was melting to his skin. He grabbed the gauntlet. It was heavy, maybe 15 kilograms. Too heavy for a 14-year-old boy to wield effectively, unless you bypassed the safety limiter. Izuku's fingers flew. He didn't have tools, but he had debris. He grabbed a jagged shard of metal and jammed it into the exposed panel on the wrist of the gauntlet. He pried the plating up, exposing the copper wiring and the servomotor housing. What is he doing? Someone in the crowd screamed. Die! The sludge villain roared, swinging a massive liquid arm at Izuku. Izuku didn't look up. He saw the blue wire, the regulator. He saw the red wire, the ignition. He ripped the blue wire out with his teeth. The gauntlet whined. A high-pitched, rising scream of capacitors overcharging. The hydraulic piston hissed, extending with a violent jerk. Izuku shoved his right arm into the chassis. It was too big. It swallowed his forearm up to the elbow. The internal straps were loose. No time. He grabbed the internal handle. The feedback shocked him, stinging his palm, but the interface light turned green. The sludge villain's attack was inches away. Izuku swung. He didn't swing with his muscles. He triggered the piston. Compressed air discharge. Izuku screamed, though he didn't know why. K-chunk hisses. The gauntlet didn't just punch, it exploded forward. The hydraulic ram extended with thousands of pounds of force, striking the air in front of him. Because he had bypassed the regulator, the recoil was instantaneous and brutal. Crack. Izuku felt his shoulder pop. He was thrown backward, tumbling across the asphalt, but the effect was undeniable. The shockwave of compressed air blasted through the flames, carving a tunnel through the fire. It hit the sludge villain's fluid eye, scattering the liquid mass for a split second. The sludge recoiled, losing its grip. Bakugo's head and torso broke free, gasping. Deku? Bakugo coughed, confused, terrified. Izuku lay on his back, clutching the smoking, sparking gauntlet that was now dead weight on his arm. He scrambled to his feet, adrenaline masking the pain in his dislocated shoulder. Kaken! Izuku yelled. Breathe! The villain recovered instantly, reforming his eye. You little brat! That's hero tech. You think a toy makes you a threat? The sludge rose up, a tidal wave of death. Izuku raised the gauntlet again, pulling the trigger. Click. Dead battery. Overloaded. He stood there, a broken boy with a broken toy. I tried, he thought. I did something. and then, a shadow fell over him. I really am pathetic. All Might appeared. He wasn't smiling. He was bleeding from the mouth, steam pouring off him. But he was big. I told you to be realistic. And here I am, watching a child teach me what that means. All Might grabbed Izuku's good arm and pulled him back, stepping between the boys and the villain. He cocked his fist. His real fist. Detroit. Smash! The punch changed the weather. An updraft spiraled into the sky, punching a hole in the clouds. Rain began to fall, dousing the fires instantly. The sludge villain was splattered across the pavement, unconscious. The crowd went silent. Then they erupted. The aftermath was a blur of flashing lights and scolding voices. Izuku sat on the bumper of an ambulance, a paramedic resetting his shoulder. It hurt, but the pain felt distant. You are incredibly lucky, kid. Death Arms was shouting, pointing a finger in Izuku's face. You stole professional equipment. You tampered with it. That gauntlet is worth 2 million yen. You could have blown your arm off. Whatever you did to the regulator, Kamui Woods added, shaking his head, it completely fried the circuitry. Reckless. Absolutely reckless. They were angry. They were right. On the other side of the barricade, the heroes were praising Bakugo for his bravery and powerful quirk. It was the natural order of things. I'm sorry, Izuku mumbled, looking at his feet. My body moved. And I saw the wiring. Just go home, Death Arms sighed, grabbing the ruined gauntlet from the paramedic. And leave the hero work to the heroes. To the professionals. Izuku stood up. He bowed low, apologizing again, and walked away. He expected All Might to stop him. He expected a wait, young man. But when he looked back, All Might was surrounded by reporters. The hero met Izuku's eyes for a brief second. He gave a small, sad nod. Acknowledgement of bravery, yes. But not an invitation. All Might had drawn a line in the sand. You have the heart, the look said. But you do not have the power. Izuku walked home in the rain. 2 days later, the Midoriya apartment was quiet. Inko Midoriya moved softly around the kitchen, worry etched into every line of her face. Izuku hadn't left his room since the incident. Inside, the room was dark, lit only by the glow of a computer monitor. Izuku wasn't crying. He was typing. The hero analysis notebooks were stacked in the corner. He wasn't looking at them. Instead, his screen displayed a complex schematic of a hydraulic actuator. The Death Arms gauntlet failed because the battery discharge rate was too slow for the motor, he typed. If I used a graphene-based capacitor instead of lithium-ion, the burst potential would triple. But heat dissipation becomes the issue. He wasn't writing fanfiction anymore. He was engineering a ghost. Ding dong. Izuku paused. He heard his mother answer the door. Izuku! Inko's voice was high-pitched, panicked. Please come out. There are people here for you. Police? Izuku thought. Did Death Arms press charges for the damage to the gauntlet? He stood up, his stomach twisting. He pulled on a sweatshirt and walked into the living room. 2 figures sat at the humble dining table. One was a small, strange creature, a mix of mouse, bear, and dog, wearing a sharp suit. The other was a man wearing a yellow construction helmet and a bizarre mouth guard that looked like an excavator's shovel. Izuku froze. Principal Nizu? He whispered. And the excavation hero, power loader? Good evening, Midoriya-kun. Nizu chirped, his paws resting on a teacup. Your mother makes excellent tea. Am I being arrested? Izuku asked, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. Power loader laughed, a muffled, metallic sound. Arrested? Kid, if we arrested everyone who tinkered with gear, I'd be serving a life sentence. Please sit, Nizu gestured. Izuku sat, his hands gripping his knees. Inko hovered nervously by the kitchen counter. Midoriya-kun, Nizu began, his beady eyes sharp and intelligent. We reviewed the footage of the sludge incident. Not the news footage. The traffic cams. The drone feeds. Izuku flinched. I know. I was reckless. I interfered. You engaged a villain that 3 pro heroes were afraid to touch, Power Loader corrected. But that's not why we're here. We're here because of how you did it. Power Loader placed the tablet on the table. It showed a slow-motion replay of Izuku kneeling by the gauntlet. 4 seconds, power loader said. It took you 4 seconds to identify the bypass port, strip the regulator wire, and hotwire a semi-autonomous gauntlet to a manual trigger. Do you have any idea how complex that wiring is? Izuku blinked. I read about the Death Arms Mk4 in Support Monthly. The schematics were in the June issue. I knew the regulator throttled output to 60% for safety. I just removed the limit. You turned a blunt instrument into an air cannon, power loader said, leaning forward. You understood the physics of the situation better than the man wearing the suit. Death Arms tried to punch sludge. You used wind pressure. Niza took a sip of tea. Midoriya-kun, tell me. Why do you want to be a hero? Izuku looked at his hands. I want to save people. I want to make them feel safe, like All Might does. But I'm quirkless. All Might told me. He told me I can't be a hero without power. He is correct, Niza said cheerfully. Izuku flinched. The confirmation hurt, coming from the smartest being on the planet. You cannot be a hero without power, Niza continued. But who defined what power is? Is it biology? Is it muscle? Or is it the ability to apply force to a problem? Niza hopped off the chair and walked over to Izuku. Hero society is stagnant, Midoriya-kun. We rely too much on genetic lottery winners. We have strong heroes who are foolish, and smart heroes who are weak. What we lack is synthesis. Nizu extended a paw. UA High is launching a new initiative. It is classified. It is experimental. It is under the jurisdiction of the support course, but it is not about making gadgets for others. It is about application. We call it the Vanguard program, power loader grunted. Pilots. Operators. Engineers who get in the field. Izuku stared at them. You mean, suits? Like mechs? Exoskeletal enhancement, power loader corrected. We give you the tools. You build the armor. You pilot the machine. You fight alongside the heroes. We are looking for a mind that can analyze a villain in seconds and build the solution in minutes, Niza said. We saw you on that street. You didn't see a monster. You saw a puzzle. And you solved it. Niza smiled, a slightly terrifying expression. Izuku Midoriya. You have no quirk. Good. That means you have no crutch. We are offering you a spot in Class 1H. But you won't just be building support items. You will be building yourself. Izuku felt tears pricking his eyes again. But this wasn't the despair of the rooftop. This was something else. It was the feeling of an engine turning over for the first time. Can I? Izuku's voice shook. Can I really save people? With just machines? Power Loader tapped his helmet. Kid, look at me. I dig through mountains. Do I use my hands? No. I use steel. Steel doesn't get tired. Steel doesn't feel fear. If you build it right, steel never fails. Izuku stood up. He thought of Bakugo's explosion. He thought of All Might's emaciated form. He thought of the heat of the gauntlet on his arm. He wiped his eyes and looked Nizu in the eye. I'll do it. 5 months later, the UA entrance exam. The gates of UA High towered over the students. The crowd was a sea of unique shapes and colors, kids with horns, wings, floating objects. Izuku Midoriya stood among them. He wasn't wearing a tracksuit. He was wearing oil-stained cargo pants and a vest covered in pockets filled with screwdrivers, wire cutters, and a multimeter. He caught sight of Bakugo near the entrance. Bakugo sneered. Out of my way, Deku. Don't tell me you're actually trying for the general ed department? Izuku adjusted the heavy case strapped to his back. It hummed quietly. No, Kaken, Izuku said calmly. Support. Support? Bakugo scoffed. Going to be a servant for the real heroes? Fitting. Bakugo walked away, confident, explosive. Izuku didn't let it sting. He turned toward the separate entrance for the support exam, practical division. He walked into a massive hangar bay. It was filled with scrap metal, engines, and tools. Power Loader stood on a podium overlooking the 50 candidates. All right, listen up. Power Loader shouted. This isn't a written test. This is a scrapyard. Your objective is simple. In 3 hours, robots will enter this arena. You have that time to build something from this pile of junk that can stop them. The other students looked nervous. Some were already grabbing pre-made blueprints. Izuku smiled. His eyes scanned the pile of scrap. Titanium strut. Industrial conveyor motor. Tesla coil from a defunct generator. Gyroscopic stabilizer. He didn't see junk. He saw the mark I. He dropped his heavy case on the floor and popped the latches. Inside wasn't a costume. It was a portable welding torch, a laptop, and a sensory interface headset. He put the headset on. The world was overlaid with grids and measurements. Time to shift gears, Izuku whispered. He ran toward the scrap pile, not as a boy who wanted to be a hero, but as the architect of his own destiny. The Iron Resolution had begun. The first thing Izuku Midoriya learned about UA High's Department of Support was that it didn't smell like a school. It smelled like a mechanic's garage built inside a lightning storm. While Class 1A was likely sitting in a pristine lecture hall learning about hero ethics or quirk registry laws, Izuku was currently ducking under a table as a localized high-pressure steam explosion rattled the windows of Studio 1H. Failure! A voice shrieked with manic delight. Beautiful, catastrophic failure. The pressure valve didn't just blow, it disintegrated. Do you know what this means? Izuku peeked over the edge of his workbench, adjusting his safety goggles. Through the cloud of white steam, a figure emerged. She had pink dreadlocks that seemed to defy gravity, steampunk goggles resting on her forehead, and a grin that was equal parts terrifying and infectious. It means, Izuku ventured, that the tensile strength of the copper alloy you use for the valve wasn't rated for the thermal expansion caused by your fuel source. You need a tungsten carbide seal. The girl froze. She blinked, her golden crosshair eyes zooming in on him, literally zooming, the irises contracting and expanding with mechanical precision. She marched over to his desk, ignoring the debris of her exploded baby behind her. She leaned in close, invading his personal space with zero hesitation. She smelled like engine oil, burnt chocolate, and gunpowder. "I'm May Hatsum," she declared. "And you speak the language of the gods." Izuku blinked, flustered. I'm Izuku Midoriya. I analyzed the blast pattern and the color of the smoke. Copper burns green, but the white steam suggests a gasket failure before ignition. May grabbed his hand and shook it violently. Midoriya! I like you. You have eyes that see the flaws. Most people just see the boom. I love the boom, don't get me wrong, but the boom is the result. The build is the journey. All right, settle down, Hatsum. A muffled voice came from the front of the room. Power Loader, the pro hero Maijima, sighed as he walked through the steam, waving a clipboard. He looked like a man who hadn't slept since the quirk era began. And clean up your station. Midoriya is right. Tungsten carbide. Or just turn down the fuel injection, you maniac. Power Loader turned to the class. There were only 15 of them. It was a small, specialized group compared to the Hero Course's 40. Welcome to Class 1H, Maijima grunted. The Hero Course deals with Plus Ultra. Here, we deal with Plus Delta. Change. Improvement. Innovation. They are the sword, you are the blacksmith. Without you, they are naked people running around getting shot. He tapped the whiteboard, which was covered in complex equations. However, Maijima's eyes landed on Izuku. This year, we have a deviation. Principal Nizu has authorized a special subcurriculum within our department. Midoriya. Izuku stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the concrete floor. Yes, sir. You're the Vanguard pilot, Maijima said. The room went quiet. The other students looked at Izuku with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. While the rest of you are designing support items for others, Midoriya is designing a support item for himself. He isn't here to support a hero. He's here to build one. Wait, a student with telescopic fingers raised a hand. Like a suit? Is that even legal? The Hero Public Safety Commission has strict laws about quirkless vigilantism. It's not vigilantism if he's licensed, May interjected, already back at her desk sketching furiously. It's just really heavy clothing. Lethal clothing. It's an experiment, Maijima corrected. One that will likely fail if Midoriya can't master the engineering. Being a pilot isn't just about driving. If your servo locks up in a combat zone, you have 10 seconds to bypass the hydraulic loop before you're dead. You fix it or you die. That is your reality, Midoriya. Izuku swallowed hard. I understand, sir. Good. Today is free shop time. Midoriya, Nisa cleared out Bay 4 for you. It's got the heavier lifting gear. Hatsum, try not to kill him. No promises. Mei cheered. As the class dispersed into the chaos of drills and welding torches, Mei grabbed her blueprints and practically tackled Izuku. So, she beamed. Bay 4? That's where they keep the military-grade scraps. Are we building a tank? A jet? A jet tank? Izuku looked at her, and for the first time since the sludge incident, he didn't feel like the odd one out. He smiled, pulling a thick, battered notebook from his bag. It wasn't hero analysis. It was labeled Project Iron Soul, Mark I. We're building an exoskeleton, Izuku said, opening the book to a page dense with calculations. High-torque actuators, external battery packs, and a neurological control interface. Mei looked at the page. She didn't mock it. She didn't laugh. She drooled. Look at those gear ratios, she whispered reverently. You're sacrificing speed for raw lifting power. It's a loader. For now, Izuku said, his eyes gleaming. Heroes like All Might create wind pressure with speed. I want to create pressure with hydraulics. But I have a problem with the power source. Lithium-ion is too heavy for the output I need. Mei grinned, pulling a strange, glowing cylinder from her pocket. Meet my baby number 42. A condensed hydrogen fuel cell. Unstable? Highly. Powerful? Insanely. Izuku looked at the cell, then at Mei. If we dampen the intake manifold, we could stabilize it. Let's get to work, partner. For the next 3 hours, Bay 4 was a symphony of sparks and shouting. For Izuku, it was paradise. There was no talk of bloodlines or destiny. There was only physics. Physics didn't care who your father was. Physics only cared if you tightened the bolt. The cafeteria at UA High was a microcosm of Heroes Society. The Hero Course students sat at the center tables, loud and confident. They were the celebrities in training. The General Studies students sat on the periphery, looking envious or resigned. And the support course? They sat near the exits, usually covered in grease, speaking a language of jargon that acted as a social barrier. Izuku sat with Mei, who was currently eating rice with one hand and adjusting a sensory goggle with the other. Izuku was reading a textbook on advanced cybernetics, a smear of grease across his cheek. So, Mei mumbled with a mouthful of food. The Mark I chassis is welded, but the leg servos are lagging. The signal delay from your brain to the foot is 0.4 seconds. In a fight, that's eternity. I know, Izuku sighed, poking his Katsudon. I need to write a predictive algorithm to preload the movement. If the suit guesses where I want to move, it cuts the lag. That's dangerous, a stern voice said. Izuku looked up. Tenya Ida stood there, holding a tray with rigid posture. Predictive movement can lead to missteps. If the machine guesses wrong, you could crush a civilian. Izuku's eyes lit up. He didn't see Ida. He saw engines. Calf-mounted engines. Izuku blurted out. Radiator exhaust vents on the lateral sides. Reciprocating 4-cylinder setup based on the vibration. You're Tenya Ida, from Somei Junior High. Your brother is Ingenium. Ida blinked, taken aback. Ah, yes. How did you know the cylinder setup? The sound, Izuku said, standing up and walking around Ida, inspecting his legs like he was a car on a showroom floor. You have a slight knock in the left intake. You're using a high-octane fuel, probably orange juice, but your intake valve is sticky. If you polished the manifold, you'd get less drag. Ida looked horrified and impressed. My intake valve? I can fix it. Mei popped up, screwdriver in hand. Let me open up your calves. It'll take 5 minutes. Please do not open my legs in the cafeteria. Ida chopped his hand in the air. Deku. The temperature in the cafeteria seemed to drop 10 degrees. The chatter at the nearby tables died down. Izuku froze. He knew that voice. He turned slowly. Katsuki Bakugo stood there, his tray forgotten on a nearby table. His hands were in his pockets, but his shoulders were hunched in that predator stance Izuku knew so well. Behind him stood Kirishima and Kaminari, looking confused by the tension. "Kaken," Izuku said, his voice steady. "I heard a rumor," Bakugo said, his voice low and dangerous. "I heard the support course has a special student. A charity case." He stepped closer, towering over Izuku. "What are you doing here, Deku?" "I told you. Yui isn't for pebbles." "I passed the exam," Kaken, Izuku said. "The support exam." "Support?" Bakugo scoffed. You can't even change a light bulb without crying. You think building toys puts you on my level? You're just a glorified janitor for the real heroes." Mei stood up, her eyes narrowing. "Hey, Porcupine. Watch it. Midoriya is the best engineer in the class." "Shut up, grease monkey," Bakugo snapped, not looking at her. His eyes were locked on Izuku. "You're planning something. I know you. You think you can cheat your way to being a hero. You think if you wrap yourself in metal, it changes who you are? You're quirkless." The word hung in the air. At Yui, being quirkless was rare. Being quirkless and present was almost unheard of. Izuku clenched his fists. The old fear was there, the instinct to cower. But then he felt the weight of the wrench in his pocket. He remembered the weight of the Death Arm's gauntlet. "I'm not trying to be you, Kaken," Izuku said quietly. "Ha!" Izuku looked up, meeting Bakugo's glare. "I'm not trying to be All Might either. Not anymore. You have a quirk. You were born with a jet engine in your hands. That's amazing." Izuku took a step forward, closing the distance. "But if your engine breaks, you're done. If you run out of sweat, you stop. I'm building a system that doesn't stop. You rely on your body. I rely on my mind. And unlike your body, Kaken, my mind can be upgraded." Bakugo stared at him. He looked like he wanted to explode Izuku's face, but there was something else there: confusion. The Deku he knew cowered. This Deku was calculating. "Don't get in my way," Bakugo snarled, turning around. "Or I'll scrap whatever trash you build." He stormed off. Ida pushed his glasses up. "That was intense. You know him?" "Since we were kids," Izuku exhaled, sitting back down, his legs shaking slightly. "He's driven. He's a jerk," Mei stated, stealing a piece of pork from Izuku's bowl. "But he's got good deltoids. I could build a great exospine for him." 1 week later, ground beta. The announcement had come as a surprise. Usually, first years didn't do joint training this early, but Aizawa, the homeroom teacher for 1A, wanted to test his students' adaptability, and Power Loader wanted to test the durability of the support items under field conditions. The setting was an urban combat zone. Fake buildings, wrecked cars, and debris scattered everywhere. Class 1A stood in their hero costumes. They looked impressive. Bakugo with his grenade gauntlets, Uraraka in her pink suit, Todoroki in his half-ice plating. Class 1H stood on the sidelines, wearing heavy gray jumpsuits and utility belts. They were the pit crew. "Listen up," Aizawa drawled, looking like he wanted to be in a sleeping bag. "The scenario is a villain attack causing structural collapse. Half of Class 1A will play villains. The other half are heroes. Your job is to secure the area and rescue civilians, dummies placed in the rubble." He pointed to the support students. "You lot are observing. If a hero's costume malfunctions, you fix it on the fly. If they need a specific tool to breach a door, you provide it. You are logistics." "Sir." Ida raised his hand. "Is it wise to have non-combatants on the field?" "In the real world, police and support crews are always on the field," Aizawa said. "Protect them. If a support student gets tagged by a villain, the heroes lose points." Aizawa's eyes drifted to the back of the group. "Midoriya. You're with Team B, Uraraka, Shoji, and Sato. You're deploying Project Alpha." "Yes, sir." Izuku stepped forward. He wasn't just wearing a jumpsuit. He was wearing a bulky metal frame over his torso and legs, connected to a large, rectangular crate on a dolly. Bakugo, on the opposing villain team, sneered. He brought a suitcase. "Start!" Aizawa yelled. The exercise began with chaos. Bakugo, villain, immediately abandoned his team to hunt down Midoriya, but was intercepted by Todoroki, hero Team A. Explosions rocked the fake city. Team B moved toward the collapse zone. So, Deku-kun? Uraraka asked as they ran. What's in the box? Izuku was panting, dragging the heavy dolly. It's the Mark I. It's not ready for combat, but it's designed for heavy lifting. We don't need it. Sato, the Sugar Rush hero, flexed. I can lift anything if I eat enough sugar. They reached the collapse zone. A massive concrete slab had fallen over the entrance to the civilian bunker. I got this! Sato yelled. He downed a packet of sugar, his muscles bulging, and grabbed the slab. He grunted. The veins in his neck popped. The slab shifted an inch, then groaned. It's too heavy. Sato gasped. It's wedged. Let me help. Shoji added his tentacles, adding leverage. They pushed. The slab moved, but the debris above it started to shift ominously. Careful! Izuku yelled, his eyes scanning the structure. The load-bearing pillar is cracked. If you force it, the second floor comes down. We have to hurry. Uraraka cried. The time limit. Suddenly, a massive explosion from the Bakugo Todoroki fight a few blocks away sent a shockwave through the ground. The building groaned. The fake damage became very real. A steel I-beam, loosened by the shockwave, detached from the ceiling above them. Look out! Shoji yelled, diving to cover Sato. The beam crashed down, slamming into the rubble pile, creating a cage of steel and concrete. Uraraka, who had been trying to float some debris, yelped as she slipped and fell into a hollow pocket beneath the shifted rubble. Ochako! Izuku screamed. I'm okay. Her voice came from the hole. But I'm pinned. My leg is caught under the beam. I can't reach it to float it. Sato rushed forward, grabbing the beam. I'm crashing. His sugar rush was fading. He pulled, but he was exhausted. Get back! Power Loader's voice came over the comms. The structure is unstable. We're calling the match. Aizawa, get them out! No time! Izuku yelled. He looked at the shifting concrete above Uraraka's hole. It was sliding. In 10 seconds, it would crush the pocket she was in. Izuku turned to his crate. He didn't ask for permission. He hit the release catch. The sides of the crate fell away, revealing the Mark I loader. It wasn't pretty. It was a roll cage with legs. It was unfinished steel, exposed hydraulic hoses, and a battery pack that hummed with dangerous intensity. It looked less like a hero's suit and more like a walking forklift. Izuku jumped into the open cockpit. He didn't have a Neuralink yet. He slammed his hands into the manual control gauntlets. System start, he breathed. Whirchunk. The machine stood up, standing 8 feet tall. The pneumatic hiss was deafening. Midoriya! Abort! Aizawa shouted from the observation deck. She'll be crushed. Izuku shouted back, his voice amplified by the suit's external speaker. Izuku stomped forward. The suit was slow. Clank. 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 Every step shook the ground. He reached the pile. Sato, move! The suit's massive metal claws grabbed the steel beam pinning Uraraka. Hydraulics, engage! Izuku pulled the levers back. The suit groaned. The motors whined, a high-pitched scream of electric torque. Warning, PSI levels critical. A red light flashed on his console. Ignore. Come on! Izuku gritted his teeth. He felt the feedback in his arms. The suit didn't have strength, it had leverage. The beam began to rise. Metal screeched against concrete. Inside the hole, Uraraka looked up. She saw a giant, oily, mechanical hand lifting a weight that 2 strong heroes couldn't move. Through the roll cage bars, she saw Izuku's face, sweaty, terrified, but fiercely determined. Get clear! Izuku roared. The beam lifted 3 feet. Enough. Shoji reached in with a tentacle and pulled Uraraka out. Clear! Shoji yelled. Izuku released the levers. The suit dropped the beam with a thunderous crash. The impact was too much for the prototype. A hydraulic line in the left leg burst, spraying hot oil everywhere. The suit buckled, falling to one knee. Smoke poured from the battery pack. Izuku hit the emergency eject, the roll cage popping open. He scrambled out, coughing in the smoke, slipping on the oil. Uraraka-san! Are you okay? He yelled, ignoring the fact that his creation was currently melting itself. Uraraka sat on the ground, clutching her bruised leg. She looked at the smoking wreckage of the mech, then at Izuku. You lifted it, she breathed. Deku-kun, that was amazing. It was sloppy, a voice said. Aizawa landed next to them, his scarf floating. He looked at the oil slick. He looked at the cracked concrete where the mech had stood. You ignored a direct order to abort, Aizawa said, his eyes glowing red. Izuku flinched. I couldn't let her get hurt. The structural integrity was falling at a rate of 0.5 meters per second, Aizawa finished. If we had waited for the pros to arrive, she would have had a broken pelvis. Aizawa deactivated his quirk. He looked at the smoking mech. That pile of junk, Aizawa said, generated more torque than Sato at full power. What is the output? 4,000 psi, sir, Izuku stammered. But the seals blew at 3,800. I need better gaskets. Aizawa looked at Izuku. For a moment, the tired teacher looked almost amused. Fix it, Aizawa said. And make it faster. Next time, don't wait until the building falls down to put it on. From the observation deck, the rest of Class 1A was silent. Bakugo gripped the railing, his knuckles white. He had seen the beam move. He had heard the whine of the motor. He didn't use a quirk, Kirishima whispered, sounding awestruck. That was just metal. It's cheating, Mineta whined. No, Momoyagorosa said softly, her eyes locked on the schematics she was already mentally deconstructing. It's engineering. He just outperformed a strength quirk with a battery and some oil. Back on the field, Mei Hatsum came sprinting out of the observation tunnel, a wrench in her hand. My baby! She screamed, sliding into the oil puddle. Oh, look at you! You blew the main line. That's so cool. The pressure data must be incredible. She looked up at Izuku, her face smeared with grease. Midoriya! We need to upgrade the cooling system. If we use liquid nitrogen, we can push the output to 6,000 psi. Izuku looked at his ruined machine. He looked at Uraraka, who was giving him a thumbs up while Recovery Girl tended to her leg. He looked at his hands. They were covered in black grease. He clenched them. Yeah, Izuku said, a smile breaking through his anxiety. And we need to reinforce the chassis. I want to add jump jets. Jump jets! Mei shrieked with delight. As the sun set over ground beta, casting long shadows over the fake city, the line between hero and support began to blur. Izuku Midoriya hadn't thrown a punch. He hadn't fired a blast. He had simply turned a key, and the world had shifted. The gear shift had begun. Later that evening, the workshop. The lights were off in Studio 1H, save for the single lamp over Izuku's desk. He was taking apart the gauntlet of the Mark I. It was a mess of fused wiring and burst hoses. You're staying late. Izuku jumped. Power Loader stood in the doorway, holding 2 cans of coffee. He walked over and placed one on Izuku's desk. Sir. I was just assessing the damage. The damage is extensive, Maijima said, taking a sip. The board is talking about it. Some teachers think it's too dangerous. They think putting a quirkless kid in a death trap is a liability. Izuku looked down. I know. But Nizu, Maijima continued, thinks it was the highlight of the day. And Aizawa, well, Aizawa hates inefficient things. He thinks you're efficient. Maijima picked up a piece of the burst hose. You know, Midoriya, when I started, people told me digging wasn't heroic. They said real heroes fly. Real heroes shoot lasers. Maijima tapped his excavator helmet. But when a building falls, who do they call? When the tunnel collapses, who goes in? We do. The ones who don't mind the dirt. The ones who understand structure. He looked Izuku in the eye. Today, you didn't try to be All Might. You didn't try to punch the building away. You held it up. That's support, kid. That's the strongest support there is. Maijima turned to leave. Mei left some blueprints on her desk for a propulsion system. She calls it Project Icarus. I suggest you check the math before she blows up the gym. Yes, sir, Izuku smiled. And Midoriya? Yes? Clean up that oil slick before you leave. This isn't a barn. Right. Sorry. As the door closed, Izuku took a sip of the coffee. It was bitter, cold, and metallic. He opened his notebook to a fresh page. Subject marked to the bulwark. Focus, structural reinforcement, rapid deployment, and thermal regulation. He picked up his pencil. The sketch began to take shape. It was sleeker. Stronger. It wasn't just a machine anymore. It was a promise. Next time, Izuku thought, I won't just lift the debris. I'll clear the path. The smell of oil and grease wasn't just a smell anymore. It was the scent of progress. And Izuku Midoriya was just getting started. The bus ride to the unforeseen simulation joint, USJ, was a study in social stratification. The vehicle was a customized transport, wider than a standard city bus to accommodate the disparate needs of UA's departments. Class 1A, the hero course, occupied the front two-thirds. They were loud, vibrant, and clad in their colorful costumes, discussing quirks and signature moves with the easy confidence of those born into power. In the back third, separated by a row of equipment crates, sat Class 1H. The support course. Izuku Midoriya sat near the window, his knees bouncing nervously. He wasn't wearing a flashy spandex suit. He was clad in a heavy-duty, flame-retardant jumpsuit of dark green canvas, reinforced with Kevlar weave at the joints. A utility belt, heavier than it looked, hung around his waist, laden with tools, localized battery packs, and diagnostic tablets. Next to him, Mei Hatsum was vibrating at a frequency that threatened to rattle the bolts off the seats. I can't believe they let us bring Alpha. Mei squealed, patting the massive, coffin-sized metal crate strapped to the floor in the aisle. Do you think Aizawa-sensei will let us test the live-fire rounds? They're rubber, but they leave a nasty bruise. It's great for data collection. Keep it down, Hatsum, Izuku murmured, checking the holographic display on his wrist gauntlet. We're only here for environmental observation. Aizawa-sensei was very clear. We set up the sensor array, monitor how Class 1's quirks interact with different terrains, and we stay out of the way. Boring, Mei huffed, adjusting her steampunk goggles. Data is good, but stress testing is better. How are we supposed to know if the hydraulic fluid boils in a fire zone if we don't throw it into a fire? Midoriya, a voice called from the front section. Izuku looked up. Tsuyu Ajiri was peering over the seat back, her finger on her chin. I've been meaning to ask, Karo. That crate took 4 of you to load. Is that the robot from the entrance exam? The one that leaked oil everywhere? Several 1A students turned around. Bakugo, sitting near the front, didn't turn, but Izuku saw his shoulders tense. It's not a robot, Ajiri-san, Izuku corrected gently. It's a modular exoskeletal platform. And that was the Mark I. This is the Mark II. We fixed the seal integrity. It's still a toy. Bakugo's voice cut through the air, low and rough. Don't get in the way, Deku. If things get rough, hide behind your box. We're here to support you, Bakugo, Izuku replied, his voice steadier than he felt. That means covering your blind spots. I don't have blind spots. The bus jerked to a halt. We're here, Aizawa's voice droned from the front. Stop yapping and get your gear. Support team, you're setting up perimeter sensors first. Move. The USJ was a cathedral of catastrophe. A massive dome housing shipwrecks, landslides, burning cities, and windstorms. It was a playground for disasters. 13, the space hero, greeted them. Her speech about the fragility of life and the danger of unchecked quirks was inspiring. Izuku listened intently, his mind racing. 13's black hole is powerful, but lacks precision, he noted mentally. In a rescue scenario, debris control is key. If I were designing a suit for her, I'd add gravity well dampeners to create safe zones. All right, Aizawa said, interrupting the speech. Class 1H, set up your telemetry gear on the central plaza. I want readings on structural stress when 1A starts their maneuvers. Yes, sir. Izuku and Mei, along with 2 other support students, dragged the heavy Alpha crate toward the center of the facility. The rest of 1H began setting up tripods and sensor arrays. Izuku knelt by the crate, plugging his wrist gauntlet into the diagnostic port. System green, Izuku muttered. Battery capacitors at 98%. Hydraulic pressure stable at 4000 psi. Hatsum, calibrate the drone network. On it. Mei tapped away at her tablet. I've got 4 spy drones ready to launch. We'll have a bird's eye view of every zone. Suddenly, the lights in the massive dome flickered. Izuku frowned. He tapped his gauntlet. That's weird. I'm picking up an electromagnetic surge. It's interfering with the local Wi-Fi. Did 13 turn on a simulation? Mei asked, looking up. No, Izuku stood up slowly, his eyes fixed on the fountain in the center of the plaza. The surge isn't coming from the facility grid. It's localized. The space above the fountain twisted. Purple and black mist swirled, tearing a hole in reality. It wasn't a simulation. It was a breach. A hand reached out from the void. Pale, sickly skin. Then a face, obscured by a severed hand. Then another. And another. Dozens of figures poured out of the mist. Some were small, looking like street thugs. Others were massive, with mutant quirks that distorted their bodies. And in the center, a hulking beast with exposed brains and a beak-like mouth stood motionless. Gather together and don't move, Aizawa shouted, his scarf floating upward as his eyes flashed red. 13. Protect the students. What is that? Kirishima asked, his voice trembling. Is this like the entrance exam? Has the lesson started? Izuku took a step back, his hand gripping the release lever of the alpha crate. No, Izuku whispered, his analytical mind processing the threat level. Those aren't robots. They're breathing. They're sweating. Those are villains. 13 and Eraserhead, huh? The man with the hands on his face, Shigaraki, scratched his neck violently. According to the schedule we received, All Might should be here. Where is he? Teachers, protect the students. Aizawa commanded. Kaminari, try to contact the school with your quirk. I can't! Kaminari shouted, tapping his headset. The airwaves are jammed. It's an ECM field, Izuku said, his voice cutting through the panic near him. Someone has an electric interference quirk. They've cut the hard lines. Aizawa leaped down the stairs, diving into the horde of villains. He was a whirlwind of capture tape and martial arts. Midoriya! Hatsum! Aizawa yelled over the din of battle. Get that gear out of here. Evacuate with the others. But it was too late. A purple mist, Kurogyri, materialized in front of the students near the exit. Nice to meet you, the mist spoke, a gentlemanly voice hiding malice. We are the League of Villains. It may be presumptuous of us, but we have invited ourselves into the home of heroes, UA High School, in order to have All Might, the symbol of peace, take his last breath. Bakugo and Kirishima lunged, explosions and hardened fists tearing through the mist. But it was futile. Begone, Kurogyri said. The mist expanded, swallowing Class 1A. Izuku, standing near the central plaza with the support gear, was too far away to be warped. He watched in horror as his classmates vanished, scattered to the disaster zones. He was left at the top of the stairs with 13, Mei, Ida, Uraraka, and the rest of the support team. 13. Izuku yelled. We have to help Aizawa-sensei. He can't fight that many for long. His quirk gives him dry eye. My job is to get you out. 13 leveled her finger at Kurogyri. Black hole. But Kurogyri used a warp gate to redirect the suction. 13's back exploded as her own quirk tore through her suit. Sensei! Uraraka screamed. The space hero fell. The exit was blocked by the mist villain. Aizawa was fighting for his life in the plaza below. Class 1A was scattered. Izuku looked at Mei. Their eyes met. There was fear there, yes. But beneath the fear, there was the cold, hard steel of resolution. Hatsum, Izuku said, his voice dropping an octave. Unlock the alpha. Midoriya? Ida grabbed his shoulder. We need to run. 13 is down. We can't run, Izuku snapped, shaking Ida off. He pointed at the plaza. Look at Aizawa. There are 50 villains down there. He's erasing quirks, but he's taking hits. If he falls, we all die. We need to buy time for Ida to run and get help. Izuku slammed his hand onto the biometric scanner of the crate. Authorization, Midoriya, Izuku. Student ID, 1H001. Emergency protocol, override. Access granted. The metal crate hissed. Explosive bolts fired, blowing the side panels off. Inside sat the Mark II Sentinel mobile turret. It wasn't a humanoid mech like the ones in anime. It was functional. Brutal. It looked like the bastard child of a forklift and a tank turret. It had 2 heavy tread legs, a reinforced roll-cage cockpit, and mounted on the right arm was a double-barreled rotary cannon. On the left, a pneumatic grapple claw. Hatsum, you're on engineering and drone ops, Izuku commanded, vaulting into the pilot's seat. He pulled the crash harness over his chest. Ida Uraraka Sato, keep the mist guy busy, don't let him touch the machine. What are you going to do? Uraraka cried. Izuku shoved his hands into the control gauntlets. The HUD flickered to life, bathing his face in green light. I'm going to be the cavalry. The Central Plaza. Shota Aizawa was tired. He had taken down 14 villains. His scarf was heavy with sweat and blood. His eyes burned like fire. Every time he blinked, a quirk activated, a fireball here, a stone bullet there. He dodged a punch from a man with 4 arms, sweeping his legs, but a villain with a mutation that turned his skin to cactus needles tackled him from behind. Aizawa grunted, throwing the villain off, but his elbow cracked. Too many, he thought. I can't keep this up. Shigaraki stood by the fountain, watching with bored eyes. You're cool, Eraserhead. But you're not All Might. Nomu, crush him. The bird monster moved. It was faster than the eye could track. Aizawa's eyes widened. He tried to activate his quirk, but the creature was already there. A massive fist, black and scarred, descended toward Aizawa's face. BRRRRRRRRRT! A deafening roar ripped through the plaza. A stream of high-velocity projectiles slammed into the Noma's side. They were rubber bullets, solid, heavy, non-lethal crowd control rounds, but fired at 3,000 rounds per minute. They hit with the force of a sledgehammer. The Noma was knocked sideways, stumbling away from Aizawa. What? Shigaraki turned, his eyes widening. At the top of the stairs, the smoke cleared. The sentinel stood there. The rotary cannon on its right arm was spinning, smoke pouring from the barrels. The twin tread legs whirred as the machine descended the stairs, crushing the stone steps under tons of steel. Get away from him! Izuku's voice boomed over the external loudspeakers, distorted and metallic. A robot? Shigaraki scratched his neck, agitated. Cheating. That's cheating. This is a game of quirks. Aizawa-sensei. Move! Izuku shouted. Inside the cockpit, Izuku was sweating profusely. The neural interface was flooding his brain with data. Slope angle, 30 degrees. Center of gravity shifting. Ammunition, 4,000 rounds. Battery heat, rising. He pushed the throttle forward. The Sentinel accelerated, its treads chewing up the pavement. Villains charged the machine. Scrap metal! A villain with metal-bending powers yelled, reaching out. Hatsum! Countermeasures! Izuku yelled into his headset. Deploying chaff! Mei's voice crackled. A canister on the Sentinel's back popped, filling the air with aluminum strips and thick smoke. The metal bender's control was disrupted. Izuku swung the left arm. The pneumatic claw shot out on a cable, grabbing the villain by the waist. The hydraulics retracted, flinging the man into a group of his comrades like a bowling ball. Midoriya? Aizawa gasped, clutching his arm. The Sentinel skid to a halt in front of the teacher, its chassis acting as a wall between Aizawa and the Noma. I've got your 6, Sensei, Izuku said, his hands flying over the controls. Hatsum, status on the zones. I've got eyes on everyone. Mei reported. Todoroki is handling the landslide zone. Bakugo and Kirishima are fine in the ruins. But the shipwreck zone, Midoriya, it's bad. Mineta and Azuri are surrounded in the water. Izuku gritted his teeth. He couldn't leave the central plaza. If he moved, Aizawa died. I can't move the Sentinel. They need air support. I have a heavy lift drone, Mei said. But it has no weapons. Does it have the sonic emitter attachment for the mining survey? Yes, but send it. Izuku ordered, firing another burst from the rotary cannon to suppress a villain trying to flank them. Tell Mineta to plug his ears. The shipwreck zone. Tsuyu Azuri was tired. She was holding Mineta, treading water while a dozen aquatic villains circled them like sharks. We're gonna die. Mineta wailed, tears streaming down his face. I never got to touch a boob. Not even once. Be quiet, Mineta-chan, Tsuyu said, though her heart was pounding. We need a plan. There's too many of them. Suddenly, a buzzing sound filled the air. It wasn't a bug. It was mechanical. A large, quadrotor drone swooped down from the ceiling lights. It bore the UA support logo. Is that a pizza delivery? Mineta blinked. Attention UA students, Izuku's voice came from the drone, tinny but clear. Submerge immediately. I repeat. Go underwater now. Do it, Karo! Tsuyu didn't hesitate. She grabbed Mineta and Dove. The drone hovered 5 feet above the water's surface. A dish on its underside glowed blue. Vroom! The sonic emitter fired. It was a pulse designed to shatter rock deposits for mining analysis. Hitting the water, the sound waves were amplified. The surface of the water exploded into a fine mist. The villains, whose heads were above water, screamed as the sonic pressure hammered their eardrums. Their equilibrium shattered. They thrashed, disoriented, unable to tell up from down. Underwater, Tsuyu felt the vibration rattle her bones, but the water dampened the worst of the high-frequency pitch. She saw the villains falter. Now! Izuku's voice commanded. Tsuyu surfaced. The villains were groaning, clutching their heads. Mineta! Throw! Tsuyu yelled. Mineta, realizing he wasn't dead, unleashed his quirk. Grape Rush. He plucked the sticky spheres from his head and hurled them wildly. The balls stuck the disoriented villains together, binding their hands, their faces, their weapons. Tsuyu grabbed Mineta and leaped, using her powerful legs to launch them out of the water and onto the deck of the ship. We did it? Mineta gasped. Midoriya-chan did it, Tsuyu said, looking up at the drone as it zipped away back toward the plaza. That boy is full of surprises. The central plaza. The surprise was wearing off. The sentinel was powerful, but it was surrounded. Nomu, Shigaraki sighed, scratching his neck until it bled. Destroy the toy. Get the brat out. Then kill Eraserhead. The Nomu shrieked. It ignored the rubber bullets. It charged. Brace for impact. Izuku yelled. He crossed the sentinel's arms, activating the emergency locking bolts on the joints. The machine entered fortress mode. Bam! The impact was like being hit by a freight train. Inside the cockpit, sparks showered Izuku. The primary monitor shattered. The alarm screamed. Structural integrity, 60%. Right arm servo, critical failure. The sentinel skid backward 10 meters, gouging deep trenches in the concrete. It didn't break? Shigaraki sounded offended. Titanium cobalt alloy plating, Izuku gasped, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. With shock-absorbing gel layer, he forced the controls forward. I'm not done yet. The sentinel raised its left arm. The pneumatic claw opened. Flash-bang launcher. Thump thump thump. 3 grenades launched from the wrist, detonating in a blinding white light right in the Noma's face. It didn't blind the creature. It had no eyes, but the concussion forced it back a step. Aizawa-sensei! Izuku yelled over the external speakers. The brain. It's exposed. It has shock absorption, but its brain is vulnerable. Aizawa, leaning against the fountain, understood. He couldn't fight the Nomu, but he could help the boy. He stared at the Nomu. Erasure. The Nomu's shock absorption quirk vanished. Eat this! Izuku roared. He bypassed the safety limiters on the sentinel's right arm. The rotary cannon spun up, but not to fire. Izuku slammed the entire heavy gun barrel into the Nomu's head like a club. Crack! The Nomu reeled. It worked, you little... Shigaraki was moving now. He was fast. While the Nomu recovered, Shigaraki sprinted toward the sentinel. Midoriya! Don't let him touch you! Aizawa screamed, trying to intercept, but the Nomu backhanded the teacher, sending him flying into the stairs. Sensei! Izuku turned the sentinel, trying to track Shigaraki. But the machine was heavy, sluggish from the damage. Shigaraki leaped, landing on the cockpit's roll cage. His face was inches from the reinforced glass. His eye, visible through the fingers of the hand mask, was manic. Game over, Shigaraki whispered. He placed all 5 fingers on the cockpit hatch. Decay. It sounded like screaming metal. Izuku watched in horror as the reinforced steel turned to gray dust. The latch disintegrated. The armored glass clouded over, then crumbled into sand. The cockpit was breached. Shigaraki reached in, his hand aiming for Izuku's face. "You're just a quirkless NPC," Shigaraki hissed. Izuku didn't freeze. He didn't scream. Analyze. Range 0.5 meters. Threat: lethal contact. Option: ejection. Izuku's hand slammed onto the big red button under the console. Blow the bolts. K-chunk. The explosive bolts securing the cockpit seat detonated. The seat rocketed backward, shooting out the rear of the Sentinel just as Shigaraki's hand closed on empty air. Izuku tumbled across the pavement, still strapped into the pilot's seat. He rolled, the world spinning, until he crashed into the base of the fountain. He looked up. The Sentinel, his Mark II, the machine he and Mei had spent hundreds of hours building, was crumbling. Shigaraki's decay spread like a virus. The treads collapsed. The cannon fell off, turning to dust before it hit the ground. In seconds, the Sentinel was nothing but a pile of rust and gray powder. Shigaraki stood amidst the pile, dusting off his hands. He looked at Izuku, who was frantically trying to unbuckle his harness. "Annoying," Shigaraki said. "You have no power. You just rely on tools. It makes me sick." The Nomu stepped up beside Shigaraki. "Kill him," Shigaraki ordered. The Nomu raised a fist. Izuku finally freed himself from the seat, scrambling backward. He reached for his utility belt, pulling out a small EMP grenade. It was his last resort. "I can't win," Izuku realized. "But I can take out the lights. I can hide." The Nomu's fist descended. Boom! The doors to the USJ exploded inward. Smoke billowed. A figure stood in the doorway. He wasn't smiling. "Fear not." All Might ripped his tie off, his face a mask of fury. "Because I am here." Shigaraki paused. All Might, finally. The final boss. All Might moved. It wasn't speed. It was teleportation via brute force. He appeared in front of Izuku, catching the Nomu's fist with one hand. The shockwave shattered the glass of the dome overhead. "Young Midoriya." All Might didn't look back, his eyes locked on the Nomu. "You held the line. You bought us time." "All Might." Izuku gasped, clutching his bruised ribs. "Be careful. That thing, it has shock absorption. And the Misty One has a warp gate." "Acknowledged. Now, get to the entrance." All Might threw a punch, knocking the Nomu back. Izuku didn't argue. He grabbed Aizawa, who was unconscious nearby, and dragged him toward the stairs where Uraraka and the others were waiting. The battle that followed was a clash of titans. All Might versus the anti-symbol. Izuku watched from the top of the stairs as All Might pushed beyond 100%. He saw the steam rising from the hero. He saw the limits. "He's weakening," Izuku analyzed, terror gripping him. "He needs support." "Hatsum!" Izuku yelled. "Do we have any drones left?" "One!" Mei shouted, holding her tablet with shaking hands. "But the camera is busted. It's flying blind." "I don't need a camera," Izuku said, watching Kurogyri try to open a portal behind All Might. "I need a projectile." "Ramming speed?" Mei grinned, though she was crying. "Ramming speed." Down below, All Might was locked in a grapple with the Nomu. Kurogyri expanded his mist, aiming to cut All Might in half. Now, the final drone dropped from the ceiling like a stone. It didn't hit the Nomu. It didn't hit All Might. It slammed directly into the metal brace around Kurogyri's neck, his weak point, which Izuku had noticed during the initial evac attempt. Clang! Ga! Kurogyri flinched, his mist wavering for a crucial second.